Good afternoon and welcome to today's webinar, Staying Financially Well in Times of Inflation. I'm Emily McCormick, the Vice President of Research at Bank Director. And in this fireside chat, we're going to discuss the role of financial wellness and financial inclusion, as well as financial education. You're also going to hear about recent economic trends that financial institutions should consider as they help their customers. Today's webinar is brought to you by both Bank Director and FIS. FIS is a global leading provider of technology solutions for financial institutions and businesses of all sizes. Now, before we get really started on this, we do have a few housekeeping items to go over, so just bear with us for just one moment. You've joined this webinar in listen-only mode, so don't worry, we can't hear you. You are automatically muted. We do recommend that for a better viewing experience that you click on the slide bar at the bottom of the screen. That's going to put our presenters into full screen mode. Don't worry about taking detailed notes. We're going to share the recording with all attendees within 24 hours via email. You're also going to be able to find this on bankdirector.com. Now, if you do happen to have any technical issues, we do have a moderator chat feature that you can use. It's on our right-hand side of the screen, and you can just communicate any issues you have, and Chelsea from our team is going to do her best to take care of that. We've also got a few poll questions queued up for this webinar. So to participate in those, you're going to look at the poll icon that is also on the right-hand side of your screen. So once you've selected your response, just click on the vote button to submit that. And then finally, we encourage you to ask questions during the presentation. We really want to make this an interactive conversation, so don't feel like you have to hold those until the end. If you've got a question, feel free to go ahead and ask. To do that, again, it's on the right-hand side of your screen. You're going to hit that Q&A button and feel free to ask away. So with that, let me go ahead and introduce our speakers today. First off, we have Brian Fay. Brian is the Business Director, Retail Digital Banking at FIS. He has nearly 25 years of financial services experience, and he's led product management and line of business functions with a primary focus on consumer and retail digital solutions. Hi, Brian.
Hi, everybody. Hi, Emily.
Our other speaker is Maria Schuld. She is the Division Executive, Americas Banking Solutions at FIS. That includes core banking and digital offerings in the community and regional markets. And Maria has more than 20 years of experience in the payments and banking industries. Hi, Maria.
Hi, Emily. Hello, everyone.
Well, let's dive right in. And, to start off, I'd like to set some parameters around this conversation, because banks have long been involved in offering financial education to their communities. We've been talking about personal financial management, or PFM tools, for, at least a decade now. So for today's conversation, let's set the stage a little bit. What are we talking about when we're talking about financial wellness from a bank's perspective?
So, Emily, maybe I'll start on that one, because I think you're absolutely right. There certainly has been a traditional definition of financial wellness for quite some time, right? What has that mean? It's been things like education, right? Make sure we're offering education to consumers. It's been about things like PFM. But I think that there's a tremendous opportunity that is in front of us right now, which is this opportunity to look at the expectations that are changing for our customers. Those expectations that things are happening very immediate and candidly a low level of effort to get to that immediate response. I think the real benefit that we have in our industry is that technology is really helping us to advance how we can look at things like financial wellness. You have an opportunity now to really take all that data that bankers have and categorizing it to really understand how we can effectively help our customers to advance through the banking ecosystem. So how are we doing that? We're doing that really with how the technology has changed. There's things like artificial intelligence. We have machine learning available to us now. We have this great opportunity to really recognize patterns in people's spend And I think all of those things have given us just a tremendous opportunity to really create meaningful, immediate insights for our customers that really kind of take it beyond that conversation about education and more traditional PFM tools.
Well, when we talk about what it means for a person to be financially well, what are we really talking about there? What does that mean?
Well, the definition of financial wellness is probably going to be about as different as every person that's going to be listening to our presentation this afternoon. For some people, it's that they are actually participating in the ecosystem, right? That they are actually using the financial instruments, that they're participating in it. For others, it's a really very personal assessment, right? Is where am I in my life cycle in terms of the products that I need? Do I have the products that I need? What is my employment status? And am I able to participate? Am I able to save? Am I able to invest? I think all of those things really have a big factor in how we look at financial wellness. One of the critical ones, I think, in our industry is just how do customers look at the trust they have in bankers? How do they look at their assessment of risk? Are they willing to take risks? Do they want to participate in different vehicles that are available in the financial ecosystem? I think all those things really contribute to how each one of us has a very personal definition of financial wellness.
Yeah, I do feel like more and more financial wellness has been part of the conversation when we talk about how banks are working with their customers. What's driving that?
Yeah, I mean, Emily, I think, what it really starts with, there's a couple, let's start here. Like the challenges managing money is people, right? There's nothing new there. And what those meant 30 years ago and what they mean now, right? Some things the same, some things different. I think there are a couple reasons this is really such a hot topic right now, and it's the collision of a few things. We're operating in an environment where we just had a pandemic, right? For most of us, hopefully a once in a lifetime event, massive impact on employment status for people. So money management and having enough to get from today to tomorrow to next month, et cetera, became front of mind for many more people, or for those that it already was, it became an even bigger challenge. So macro event A. Then you got macro event B related to A, which is the inflation that's come from this, right? So, for those of us living paycheck to paycheck, right? Well, suddenly what your paycheck could cover, it can't cover it anymore. So you got two things that's making it difficult, particularly around that everyday savings and spending and having enough to do the things you want to do, put food on the table, those types of things. Now, the thing that comes along with that's the positive is that technology is now ready to support individuals on a one-on-one basis to do this. To Maria's point, financial wellness started as an education employment programs with employees, right? Well, in today's world, you don't need education employees with classes and books and videos and stuff like that. You have tools that can provide you proactive insights for you right away to help you be more financially well. So, two events that have exacerbated an existing problem, but then the advances of technology make the solutions much, much easier to get to. And I think, problems that can be solved, right? Bigger problems that can be solved, those are going to get attention, and they should.
Yeah. I think this helps set up the conversation that we're gonna have this afternoon. But I think it's a good time for our first polling question and just kind of figure out where our audience is in terms of helping their customers be more financially well. So I think Chelsea's kicked that poll off. And as we're kind of getting feedback from our audience, Brian, Maria, what goals are you tending to see from your bank clients?
I'd say what I hear the most is that they're always thinking about retention and growth when you think about this particular perspective. Obviously, other things related to banking and digital have value, but if you just really drive into what they're trying to accomplish with financial wellness, it's about how do I create a deeper relationship with the customers I have so I can keep them at a cost that's effective to me, so that they'll look to me for their next relationship. And then can I use this to attract new market segments or more of the market segments that I look to most? Can I have a capability here that can pull customers into my ecosystem and then deliver on it with that same additional value to make those new customers ones that are going to be retained?
Well, I think with that, we can probably close this poll out. looking like the bulk of those responses are leaning toward customer recommendations with digital and mobile banking. So very interesting to see where our audience is. We do see the second most popular response is customer education. So very, very interesting there. Well, let's kind of explore this a little further, because another thing that comes into the conversation is financial inclusion. That's also another thing that we hear a lot about. Is that the same as financial wellness? And if not, how is that a different concept?
Yeah, I don't, there may be somebody out there who has textbook definitions and Venn diagrams and overlaps on some of this. So I apologize for not having that in hand for this one. But, to me, let's just start with them. Financial inclusion and financial wellness. Well, they're both ultimately, in my mind, trying to help customer segments become more financially well, right? I think where inclusion is typically focused is on the lower income, lower asset market segments that are just trying to get access to the banking industry, to banking capabilities. The point of inclusion is getting them into the system. And that's the first step in financial wellness, right? Having a bank account, having a way to earn interest, having access to some level of credit, right? But also responsibly being able to manage that. I think that's an important step for customers in that life segment. I think, to me, though, at least in my terms, wellness goes broader. Wellness is more about, regardless of which stage I am in, which situation I am in, what's really my situation with income, with expense, with my money coming in, my money going out, in relationship to my goals, what I need, what I want. And so that's where, you'll hear me, Maria, and I really emphasize the point of personal, right? The goals that I have, they might look a lot like somebody much younger than me or somebody much older than me, and so might my patterns. And so we might benefit from the same type of financial wellness insights. It isn't necessarily one size fits all. Can't be, doesn't have to be. And you really then, as a result, really have to think about your customers to think about the right solution for them. Financial inclusion is just one that relates to a customer segment that's trying to get into the system, right, and trying to start to get access.
Well, I think it's notable. I believe this was research from Morning Consult that found that customers across different income levels all experience some form of income uncertainty or income anxiety, which really speaks to wellness, correct? Not necessarily inclusion, but wellness.
Yeah, and I think if we're talking the same data point, I think it was 20% of all consumers felt they could handle an unexpected expense. Even those with over $100,000 a year of earning, only 47% felt they could. So, to me, it's like you don't necessarily climb out of this just by earning more money. It certainly helps to have more on the top, right? But I think it's just indicative of a problem that's widespread. And another point on top of that, there's a data point I saw from WalletHub that says 62% of Americans don't feel like they get holistic advice about their situation at all. To me, those just speak to broad need, broad opportunity, right, to help in a personal fashion with advice and insights and suggestions.
Well, let's take this back to the bank a little bit and think about this from a competitive point of view. If you're a bank, why is this important to you?
Yeah, let me start a little bit on that one. It's very important because I think bankers, we all know, right, that the critical nature of the relationship that we have with our customers is so important. And traditionally, Brian talked a little bit about kind of pre-pandemic, we relied heavily on branches. We relied on that a little bit more of a personal connection. We've always been about digital, right? So there's never been a question that digital has been important in delivery. But I think through the pandemic, what we saw was relationships actually gravitating and moving toward digital relationships because it became a little bit harder, right, to effectively continue to push forward when you couldn't be physically together. And I think that what financial wellness is allowing our bankers to do is it's allowing them to take that relationship from one of a purely transactional in nature, financial in nature, right? I'm going to make a deposit, I'm going to process a payment, to now there's this opportunity to actually create recommendations and insights via all the information and data that bankers have. That's why I love how our bankers answered the poll, right? To say we're looking for customer recommendations in our digital and mobile banking, because we believe that that is the most impactful way that you can show your customers that in fact, right, you're using the data and at the end of the day that you care about them, right? That's been an interesting, I think, response that we've seen with our customers that have used some of our insights and wellness tools is they're getting comments back like, gosh, you really care about me. You're finding ways for me to save money. You're finding ways for me to save more and invest more, or maybe to buy some special thing that I need to buy. And it's taking the relationship candidly to a whole nother level. And I think as bankers, we need that.
Yeah, well, talking about relationship building, I wanted to focus a question on the two younger generations that we tend to serve in the industry, so Gen Z and the millennials. Definitely a high level of digital connectivity with those two generations, but also perhaps a greater need in a lot of ways for financial advice, just due to being younger, having different life goals that they're looking ahead to. Now, I want to point to something out of our Bank Director's recent technology survey, which you can access in the research section at bankdirector.com, just to throw that out there. But that survey does find that many banks say that they lack the tools to reach these younger consumers. I mean, the majority of respondents don't think they have the tools in place. These are large generations. I mean, their needs are only going to grow and they're going to become a bigger part of banks' customer bases. So how can banks think about meeting these customers where they are?
So this is, we all know, all of the generational groups have a strong use of digital, right? We've increased penetration pretty significantly, right? Especially over the pandemic. But this is the native digital group, right? This is the group that really is using your digital tools, and you need to be able to ensure that they're identifying your brand with those tools. So whether it's getting your marketing out there to very explicitly talk about what you're doing in this space, how you can help them to advance their financial usage of the ecosystem, whether that's getting them first time into your financial institution, which is a great way to hold on to them as they mature in their financial usage, but also expanding kind of the relationship. So I think it's all about digital, obviously, with this group, and making sure that they know you have these tools that are available. Don't make them ask. Right? You need to be out there and you need to be sure that they have those tools, right? We know this is a group, right? That is they want to know your bank is caring about the environment and involved in the community and caring about them as people. All the research tells us that that's really important to this generation. So let's capitalize on it. Let's make sure that they know these tools are out there and that you're investing in them. I think it's important, particularly to this generation.
And keep in mind with this one too, talk is cheap, right? So if you're going to go talk about and advertise some value and talk about a theme behind it, that can bring them on board because they see that. If you don't deliver on it, they look at changing, to banks, like changing from Yelp to just like moving on from Uber, right? Like it's the exact same thing. So you've got to make sure you're delivering that value in a good way. But again, I think they're digital natives. They want to use digital first. The value is there. And my next step I'd suggest thinking about these groups too is though they also have expressed a unique interest in branches. It's not a first place, but they do look at coming into the bank as a nice added value. Perhaps I've seen some that say even more so than the generation slightly older than them. So if you can leverage the digital as a starting point, drive that engagement and value, and then use that to drive a deeper banker relationship. Now you have a really great relationship with a young customer that's going to grow with you, and you can grow with them.
Yeah, no, that's a fantastic point. I just moved my son into college, and we changed banks because of the branches. They still matter, but also with the digital tools there. So this is probably a good time for our next poll. Looking at market segments, and we want to know which market segment that you serve that has the most need for help in terms of financial wellness. So we've kicked that poll off. Realize that you can only pick one response. So again, we're kind of looking at what has the most need in terms of financial wellness. I'm sure we could pick one or two, but pick what has the most need there. Maria, Brian, any comment on based on this question as far as what you guys are seeing?
Yeah, not to taint the poll too much, but but it pretty typical here. It's kind of a consumer personal account holders the starting point, and leaning into smaller business types of account holders and what might be similarly valued to them. And I think that may be just exactly how this trend continues to evolve and how the technology evolves. But I would say this aligns. In fact, I'm excited to see the level of the small business one popping up as I look at it.
Yeah, we'll keep running that. So everyone, go ahead and get your responses in before we close that out. I mean, for businesses, does that this conversation that we've been having about financial wellness, does that look a little different for business?
I think the insights themselves might, right? But if you just go up to the generic concept that we're talking about, well, what's financial wellness for a business, right? They have different problems, but our heads go to things like, and capabilities are going to things like, better cash flow management capabilities that are smart, right? That aren't just telling you what it is, they're predicting. They're looking at patterns. They're looking at other businesses like yours. And then, similarly, the same vein of incremental suggestions, right, about the business's spending itself or around how they're managing their cash. And again, it's going from, a lot of this is a transition from self-serve heavy effort, right? Where, a lot of the data you're talking about, the bank already has it, right? It's there. If customers want to comb through it and do their own research, they can get to it. We don't live in that world anymore. It's about looking at it and pushing up insights and actionable things to the customer that are valuable. And I think that concept clearly applies to consumers, smaller businesses, and will continue to go across the entire banking spectrum.
Well, we have gone ahead and closed out the poll, and 71% indicating consumers. I don't think any of us are surprised there, but 29% pointing to small businesses. So I think that's an important consideration. It's a big part of, particularly for community banks, a big part of what they have to do.
Yeah.
Well, this does speak to a lot of what we've been talking about, does speak to personalization and the fact that everyone's financial situation is going to look a little different. You touched a little bit, Brian, on technology. So, not sure who wants to take this question, but what technological capabilities are driving today's approach to financial wellness?
Yeah, to me, it's really about data, right? Availability of data, openness of data, scope of data that you might happen to have. And we could talk about banks' role in that and where you start and where you go. And then, the word artificial intelligence and machine learning get thrown around like peanut butter today, but it's pattern recognition, pattern comparison, right, and prediction types of capabilities, which all of the AI stuff is doing, capable of doing really, really well right now and advancing. And the combination of those two things, data about the customer and AI capabilities to identify patterns and propose them, that just isn't about mass. Then you're at scalable, personal, and low friction, perhaps, most important in all of it. There's no tolerance for setup anymore. There's no tolerance for enrollment anymore unless the value the customer gets is so obvious and huge. So I think, the beauty now is if you do have, as banks do, a good archive of a customer's transactional data, if you can find ways to encourage the customer to help connect you as a bank to other financial relationships they might have, if with the customer's appropriate consent or with your own capabilities, you're able to append it and get smarter about that, then you're, depending on the tool, you're creating patterns, identifying patterns, and ultimately, again, the point is to identify specific things that customer can take in terms of actions to be more financially well. But none of this is like so cutting edge that it's like, hey, it just happened yesterday. This has been evolving for a long time, and I'm candidly excited that we're here, but really excited to see where the heck this could go further. I think particularly more and more personalized actions and more easy ways to act on an insight, right, is where this is going to go even further. So it isn't just I know about something, I know my option. It's easy for me to go take action where I can help manage my money better.
Yeah. Well, let's get a feel for where our audience is on that technology piece with our third poll question. So we just want to know what role technology plays right now in advancing financial wellness for your customers. So we've provided a spectrum of options that goes from actively using technology to maybe you're just kind of looking at the space, or maybe you're not involved. I suspect if you're in this webinar, you're probably at least in the monitoring space. Brian, you laid out a lot of technology, but is there any other specific technology to keep in mind as you're kind of approaching this issue of financial wellness?
Yeah, I'd go an inch deeper on your data strategy as a bank, because if you start at the beginning, at the fundamentals, what do you have just by the nature, right, of being a bank to your customers? Well, you have all of the activity on their account. Okay, so that's an incredible starting point, right? Versus starting from somewhere else. You're talking about financial wellness, particularly if the customer has an active debit or credit relationship with you, where you can really see where their money's going. I would just strongly encourage you to think about openness of that, and to recognize that the reality is that you're not going to control necessarily how many financial relationships or how much of the financial activity your customers have that happen on the accounts that you hold. We live in an app world, right? Where customers probably have, even at younger ages, a few different ways that they're moving money around. Could be a few different banking or other fintech relationships. So make sure that you're thinking about ways to allow the customer, with appropriate consent, if they want to pull that into the value that you can provide for financial wellness. And then also think about how you can expand your data. There's lots of data about customers available. We might talk about privacy later on, because there's certainly some things to be careful about as you go there. But really, this is all about, if you think about pattern recognition, that's as good as the data that it can run on. Well, that data comes to how much data do you have about one customer and how many customers do you have. So think about how you can expand both of those dimensions. And sometimes it's easier to expand the amount of data you have about individual customers versus how many customers that you can have as a starting point.
Well, we did close the poll out. More than half are actively using technology now. A quarter have a project in place, and then roughly another quarter are evaluating their options. So we do see leaning toward maturity in our audience today. So that's interesting to see. All of this, involves incorporation, right, within the digital banking strategy overall. This is a piece of what a bank's going to want to do in their digital banking. So how should bank leaders approach embedding financial wellness in that digital banking platform?
I love the way you asked the question, right? Because you're saying embedding in versus something else, and it kind of reminds me of some of my earlier days in digital advertising and digital marketing, right? And some of the considerations that maybe were a little hard to accept at those points in time, but it's kind of the same general mindset. Like the attitude, when some of those capabilities were coming, is get as many ads in front of as many people, and that doesn't work at all, right? That you get banner blindness, right? Very quickly, or worst case, you literally turn off the audience it is that you're encountering. I think, to me, balance in this is really important. Being logical, and most important, thinking about your customers' journeys and use cases that they're interacting with you on. And I say all these things as if they're like unique concept, but if you go talk to your really good bankers, right, they get this inherently. They understand when a customer comes in, they're coming in with a purpose and a need into your branch. It could be servicing, it could be a new product, it could be a question. You can't jump in front of that and try to redirect them on a different path and think you're going to get a good result. So to me, if you can start with thinking about the journey your customer is taking, be it in digital or other places you might be exposing this, make sure you're really giving them the easiest path to that. Low friction experiences for just transactional based digital journeys are the foundation for financial wellness in digital. Because if you can allow that to happen, you satisfy them, you've created some trust. Then you interject with the added value, the financial wellness at that point in time. You introduce them to what you can offer. And then the next conversation become more and more robust. Again, what does this sound like? This sounds like a great relationship banker, right? Who starts by saying, I know you want a loan, let's help you do that. And then it's, hey, did you know we have, right? But still being very receptive and listening to what the customer is saying they want. And then to me, that starts by thinking about the journey, right? That the customer themselves started on, and not thinking about what you're trying to say and tell them, even if you think it's critically important, right?
I mean, thinking about that journey, I mean, I'm interpreting that as really you're talking about fitting wellness into a customer's day-to-day life, how they live their lives day to day, meeting them where they are. What does that look like?
Yeah, so let's take like a relatively simple one, and I'll maybe lean a little more into the, in my opinion, the don't do's, but we'll get all the way through that, right? Let's say if your customers don't understand that you have insights and financial wellness tools available to you, and they're going to your mobile banking application, right? Pretty standard use case. They're not going to your mobile banking application to get financial wellness insight. So start there, right? They aren't doing that if they don't know that it's there. Like banking, for good or bad, does not start with an exploratory type of journey. That's just not the type of experience we're beginning with. They're coming to check their balance. And I would suggest, even if they're checking their balance, it isn't just I'm going to go see my bank balance. They're doing that for a reason. They're checking their transactions for a reason. They might be going to make a transfer, pay a bill, send money to somebody else. Just remember that that's why they logged into. Now, of course, if you can do things to create awareness outside of the ecosystem, through marketing, through other communications to sort of drive that activity, that's awesome. But recognize they're coming in with that journey, and make sure it's frictionless to get there. And think about where in that journey it makes sense to drive awareness of these types of capabilities, where you can interject something of value, where you can drive deeper engagement if the customer has already done it. But just always remember that customer's intent, their purpose, and their journey when they engage with you, digital or otherwise, that has to come first if you're going to get value out of this. Otherwise, you're kind of breaking your trust, pact that you have with your customers, right? And that you're not doing what they wanted to do first. But a lot of success, for example, that you'll see is at the end of a transaction, right? I've now come in, I've completed a transfer, success page. That's a great place to introduce a new feature and function. I always would suggest, if you have these capabilities available and you can do it, your homepage of your mobile application is a great place to drive awareness of these. Just don't make it mean that they have to scroll down to get to their account balance or to get to basic transactional capabilities. But tease it into the relationship. And then once you have that engagement, always be thinking about, how do I then drive more and more and more of that engagement? So to me, again, things like alerts, right? The push notifications, getting the customer to agree to more proactive types of measures versus, kind of, if you build it, they will come starting points. That's what's going to really get that wheel spinning. But first and foremost, it's just realize your customers, until they know that the tools are there and they're coming to see them, they're approaching you for something else. And don't get in the way of that, because that's not going to really get that wheel that you need to get spinning.
Yeah. Well, against that context of looking at how you're approaching digital banking, it's a good time for our next poll. Just want to understand your primary objective for digital banking. So that may be cost savings. It may be looking at loyalty and retention. It may be looking at wallet share, or it may be looking at growing your customer base. I'm curious how you guys are seeing financial wellness maybe play into one or two of these variables as folks respond to this.
So I love all the focus, right, on customer loyalty and retention, and maybe a little bit on increasing share of banking wallet. Happy to see that. Those bankers. We're always going to look at increasing wallet. There's no question. I think, though, the key is that this is a very important initiative in terms of retention and loyalty. I think sometimes we have a tendency to always want to look at how many new accounts did I get, right? And it's always about kind of the account growth side of it. And I think that this is one of those initiatives where it's about really deepening a relationship and really ensuring that your financial institution stays that trusted partner to your customers. because it goes back again to the, boy, you care about me. I want to do business with people who want to see me succeed and go forward. So I love the focus on loyalty and retention in the response. Of course, though, it's always about, at the end of the day, we want to increase our share of wallet. There's no question. That's why we're all in business. So that's certainly critical and important. But I think this has really got to be part of your, how do I further increase my penetration into the client base and make sure that when it comes to a financial need, when it comes that this is going to be my destination and this is where I'm going to come for it. And I'm happy to see the bankers are seeing that value.
Yeah, we have closed the poll, and we do see 2/3 pointing to customer loyalty and retention. So let's talk a little bit about ROI or indicators of success. You know, say you're a bank and you're increasing that focus on financial wellness, the technology around that. How do you approach things like ROI or making sure you're getting out of it what you want?
It's a very important question. You know, and as I stated, a lot of people go right to how many new accounts did I get when I instituted financial wellness, and I'm not sure that that's always going to be the best measurement, at least not early on. It's going to take time, I think, for these solutions to become part of the culture of the bank, and certainly enough to your customers to experience it and to have that loyalty built. So I think account growth absolutely comes, deposit growth comes, efficiency ratios, all those things that as bankers we care so much about. But this is an area where we try to recommend that our customers take a look at really segmenting their customer base. Understand, you know, where you are. We talked earlier about like Gen Z as an example, and how do we get more penetration? Well, number one, know what your penetration is in those areas, and how can you focus some of these financial wellness towards those particular groups. I think the more segmentation you can get in how you understand your client base will help a lot in terms of the return of investment on these kinds of solutions.
And the thing I build upon it is like there's the outcome, there's the ultimate ROI. You know, this is one where, you know, there'll have to be some assumptions made, right? About, you know, how does loyalty and retention drive growth? You know that, right? You guys have, you know, lifetime value models and stuff like that in some form or another. You got to kind of put a stake in the ground and say, we think this is what this will do in terms of impact. But you don't have to stop there either, right? That might be your original starting point, your pro forma, your business case that you've got behind the investment. Then what I would be asking is, okay, knowing that this is about lifetime of customer and it's about value and loyalty and retention to drive that, what can I then be tracking in the near term to understand what's effective, and ask yourself some questions about how things that I can measure are going to help me understand, am I on the path to getting that value? The particular thing that I'd suggest focusing on is, you know, to think about it in terms of any product, right? Trial, adoption, right? Ongoing usage of it. Because, you know, I believe if you look at through those lenses, you can build a path towards that ROI with that, with whatever finance and other teams you need to have involved. But those are also then going to be the key measures that you're going to start to baseline and say, okay, how do I drive more of this? Right? Do I have a trial problem? Okay, how do I drive awareness, introduce this in better spots? Do I have a point where I'm really not only getting to trial and customers aren't adopting it? Okay, how do I drive more of that? Do I need better insights? Do I need to introduce them and remind them about them? And then it's just that ongoing usage of it. But I think if you can work through that funnel, I guess I would challenge any of you to say that if you can get a customer, you know, 25% of your customers to engage month over month in something that's added value like this, your leadership teams have to look around the table and go, okay, we believe that tied to the eventual value if you can do that. Because that's ultimately customers coming and seeing you as a differentiated bank value proposition. You're not just about holding my money and moving it around. You're giving me added value, and the proof that I value it is I'm using it every month or every week or whatever that is. So I wouldn't, you know, you're ultimately, you got to have the ROI, you got to have the business case. Make sure you have those metrics that you feel like you can track to, and some assumptions about how they tie to ROI.
Yeah. I mean, getting back to engagement, I mean, you provided some great don'ts, you know, especially within the context of the digital banking platform. But Are there other considerations for banks as they think about how do we drive engagement? How do we make sure we get customers to use this tool?
Yeah, I think Brian said it well when he talked about really understanding kind of where your customers are in their journey and helping them to to progress their journey through the use of these tools. Now, some of that certainly could be as we talked about, is make sure they're weaved into your digital and your mobile solutions, right? That's number one, because that's going to be the point of engagement. Make sure that you are that you're advertising it, that you're marketing it, that they know, that your consumers know that those solutions are available. I think what we've seen in terms of customers reacting to this, end customers, right? Your banking customers reacting to this, is that they see these insights in areas that bankers haven't traditionally been engaged in, right? So things like using the data you have to make sure someone knows they might be paying for 3 different streaming devices. Now, most of us pay for 3 different streaming devices, but it's one of those where I think a banker creating an insight like that based on this really amazing data that we have, and to be able to introduce an insight like that. Did you know you're paying for this? Did you know you paid you this much of your income or your budget toward restaurant or eating out or whatever it happens to be? I think those are areas that our bankers haven't traditionally been engaged in. And what a powerful contribution to someone's day in life, right? To be able to offer those contributions. And that's what these insights tools, these wellness tools that are out there can really help. At the end of the day, it's about helping them budget, but you're really coming to them, I think, at a level of their data and the customization and personalization that's so important. And I will tell you, as a consumer, I think you get one of those and you're really hooked toward really getting and seeing value in it.
And Maria, you hit on a key point, which is that, we talk a lot mobile, digital, right? But it's all the touch points, right? So, and that goes back to that data portability. Like, think about making sure that the insights that the system's aware of course, you got to present them in digital experiences. That's where the personalization occurs. That's where the customer's going. No argument. How do you make it so that when they go into the branch, it isn't just the teller saying, "Hey, have you looked at our insights tool?" It's the teller saying, "Hey, did you know you have 3 subscriptions?" Or, "Hey, did you know you're spending a lot less this month than last month?" Right? Like bringing that value forward into every touch point that's possible. I mean, if you still rely on, for certain customer segments, physical mail for things, well, there's no reason you couldn't be producing 5 different buck slips and getting them into customers' envelopes as appropriate based on some type of specific action that they can take. So bring the value, bring the personalization, bring the awareness to all the channels, even if we really feel like the primary use of it's going to be digital.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and really what you're talking about is building and improving relationships that, so your bank really knows who you are essentially. And I think that's a good lead into our last poll, looking at how you're creating customer relationships, how you're building those in an area where you have almost ubiquitous digital adoption. So we've got some response options for you, but you do need to pick, maybe the most impactful approach, since we do allow you to select only one. But is that banker engagement in digital? Is it added value through insights and recommendations? Is it maybe PFM tools or credit score tools, or is it other? And I would say if you're not doing any of those, probably pick other as well. So, I mean, what would you guys keep in mind here? I mean, I guess maybe explain too, banker engagement in video, in digital. We haven't really talked about that, but I assume there could be a wellness spin there as well. If it can happen in the branch, it can happen through digital.
Yeah, I for one think that that's absolutely the way to think about it. I mean, we lean into channels a lot because that they have different investment and different approaches, and it's where a lot of the work and the effort is. And if you step back, it's just saying, hey, my customers just banking with me, right? And what you're trying to do is you're trying to take it from banking to a relationship around their money and around their financial wellness. So any banking interaction should be relevant for this. Some might be relevant for different types of engagement, different types of insights, different sort of stages in the funnel. But if it fits in your overall experience strategy, then it should fit in all your channels.
Yeah. Well, we've closed the poll out, and we've got just a slim majority on adding value through insights and recommendations, and it's kind of equal between banker engagement and digital, PFM tools, and then that other box. So I want to ask you guys a little bit, kind of circle back to the data. That's really what we've been essentially talking about off and on through all this. But before I ask my question, do want to throw out to our audience, we still have just a little bit of time left, so don't forget to ask your questions if you have any. I'm happy to float those into Brian and Maria. But let's look at data, because financial wellness, all those insights that can be highly beneficial to understanding the customer. But you guys mentioned trust very early on. Banks need to keep that trust. It's a relationship that's predicated on trust. So how should banks walk through those privacy considerations?
Yeah, carefully, right, would be the one word answer to the question. I think, to me, a great way to just start on any privacy question is first to jump into that customer's shoes again and start by saying, either with, the knowledge you have from experience, research you have available, making sure you're grounding yourself in what is my customer's baseline expectation of the information they already know about me. Because that's that's a nice starting point where you're saying I'm trying to begin on the same page as my customer. I mean, in general terms, as consumers, you're not going. I guess it's all in the eye of the beholder. But N of one again. I don't have as much concern if you I know you have my transaction data. So let's take an example to tell me a cash flow trend and tell me whether I have more or less than last month, and to predict where I'm going to be in 2 months. You took an action that I didn't ask for, but that's all based on stuff you already know, right? So I personally think that if you take that lens, probably most of those use cases are relatively safe, and you're not going to raise much privacy concern. Where I think you need to be particularly thoughtful is when you go outside of those bounds of things that you just know by your nature of the relationship. And I think there's a couple that come into financial wellness. The first is where you've gone and gotten other data about the customer, which is available, right? And you're leveraging that data to produce an insight. I would suggest being very cautious about that. And where I'm going there is, I think that type of thing is very valuable if you're going to have a segmented communication strategy. I don't know if your customers want you to start doing, SKU level insights and targeting if you're not making it clear that you have SKU level data about their purchases. Now, what's a way to get over that? If you have the SKU level data, show them the SKU level data in the transaction history. Just put it there in front of them, right? And then, to me, that starts to give you a little more latitude because you're sharing all the data that you have. The other side that I think, in my mind, maybe even requires a little more thought is when through financial wellness, just like through a great banker, you've started to learn more about the customer through your own interaction. One example in the financial wellness space where this plays out is in automated savings or goal setting types of capabilities. To me, it makes a lot of sense to allow customers, if willing, to set goals. It makes a ton of sense to help them save towards those in whatever sort of auto savings type of schema you might come up with your technology or technology providers. If you do that and the customer achieves the goal, it makes a lot of sense to celebrate them achieving the goal and to say they crossed that line. To take that goal that they have, though, and incorporate into other marketing, I think starts to get a little tenuous, right? I don't know that I want you, if I say I'm saving for a vacation, how much, advertising do I want to start to see about the vacation? I think you just walk carefully, ask yourself those types of questions. But I think, to me, you're operating in pretty safe ground if the data that you're using is all data the customer all has equal access to, and if you're being thoughtful about how you're leveraging something the customer shared with you. Think about how you engage with a digital tool that you have. When you start to enter things and have settings in there, I don't know that I'm necessarily saying now, just go take this and sell it to everybody else and do marketing with it. And I think I got to one there. I certainly would be very hesitant, or personally would not even talk about a perspective where you're taking goals and you're then leveraging that to, support another external marketing effort or something like that. I think you really got to treat your ringed fence as the place where your customer told you that in that fence, you keep that in that fence. But then, I think your partnership in achieving that goal is full game and is part of the value of financial wellness. No straight answers though on this one, and I think you really got to think about it use case by use case, case by case. The good thing is this is one where we're all people, right? I think if we step back and we just try to get into the shoes of the customer and apply our own perspectives to it, you can get to some balanced answers.
Well, I've just got a couple of questions more to kind of close this out, but this is going to be a really broad question because every bank has, their different strategic approach and maybe in different places technologically and strategically here. But what could they consider doing right now as they're looking at, okay, we want to be stronger on financial wellness? What's something they could start doing right now?
Yeah, I mean, my first question there goes kind of to where you started, Emily, which is broad. The starting point for me should not be necessarily tactically, what am I going to go do with financial wellness? The first point is just spend a little time saying, okay, let's make sure we've got a good grounding in who we are as a brand, what our customer experience strategy is. There's no right or wrong answer to what a customer experience strategy is in my mind. It's just knowing that we can state what that is. And ideally, you might have different strategies for different segments if that's appropriate. That then can allow you to then ask the question of, where does financial wellness fit into this picture? That's how it's going to work the best, that it's not a separate thing. And then if you can identify some problem spaces that fit into your experience strategy, then look to the tools. There are lots of tools. There's no shortage of educational tools, of insight tools, of data you can pull in. That's not the challenge. Integration, depending on your ecosystem, can be. But if you can start with that grounding and what's the relationship you're trying to achieve from your customer experience strategy, how does that relate to your priority market segments? Then you have context to consider tools, and it'll give you a really much clearer view of which are the approaches that matter the most to me. And if you can find those that align with everything else you're doing, that's where you get your 1 + 1 = 3, and you really get that loyalty, retention, growth goals being achieved.
Well, looking ahead a little, what's next for financial wellness?
We talk a lot about that within FIS. Technology has really made so much of this possible. The advances that we've had and the ability to personalize these insights and bring automation right to the processes. I think we would be hard pressed to think that that's going to stop or slow down, right? So I think there's going to be a tremendous amount more of this opportunity to take advantage of the data, the tremendous data that we as bankers have, and really create that more personalized, immediate experience. I think that's going to advance greatly. I think what's interesting though right now is there an opportunity to take that beyond the insight and maybe be able to take some action on behalf of your customer for that insight. I think if there's a way to bring it full closure of actually causing an action to occur, what an amazing opportunity that would be for a banker and be able to offer that. So that's certainly where we're focused, is how do we advance to a point that we can kind of create a true action for the consumer out of that experience. I think that would really help to even increase further the role the banker is playing in just day-to-day life, and not just that financial transaction.
Well, as we wrap this up, Maria, Brian, do you have any final words of advice on how banks should be thinking about financial wellness? Especially, there's a lot of economic uncertainty these days. So, final thoughts?
maybe I'll start, Brian. I think that I think it's all about addressing gaps. I think it's all about understanding really what your clients need, where they are, and how you can help to close gaps. Perhaps they're getting that gap closed in another way that you can assist and help. Or is it really an opportunity, right, for you to take the trusted relationship that you have and the data that you have and marry those together to find a way that that banker can really address some of what we're trying to address here with both financial wellness and in keeping with that financial inclusion is just get people into the ecosystem and then create tremendous amount of value, right, through these pieces of technology that are available. I would urge you to embrace it, and like I said, the ROI will come, but get involved in it and really start to see the value.
And always keep aligning your messaging around it, aligning where you're pointing the value to the context your customers are living in. We live in a time where that is the relationship to me is so obvious, right? Where we started with inflation and pandemic and job challenges and things like that. That will evolve, that will change. Make sure you make it relevant to them. Don't treat this as an island. Don't treat this as a thing on the side, because then that's all it will be. We weave it into your experiences across all your channels, and then to me that the last one is evolve with the technology. Make sure your data is open. Make sure your data can be accessed. Make sure that the provider or the capability you're building, you can get insights out and get them to other channels, and watch how this technology evolves to be more and more personal. Particularly, make sure you're evolving with it and you're prepared to evolve with it.
Well, with that, Maria, Brian, thank you so much. And I want to thank FIS for hosting the webinar today. As a reminder to our audience, you're going to be able to access the recorded version of this webinar. We'll send it out within 24 hours. You're also going to be able to find the webinar on bankdirector.com. And to everyone today, thank you for joining us, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Everyone.